Every night the fog rolls in like clockwork, thick, heavy, silent. My parents used to say, "Never go outside when it appears." I thought it was just an old small-town superstition, until the night I saw something move out there, something that shouldn't exist. Now I understand why they warned us. You ever move somewhere thinking you're escaping your past, only to realize you've just walked straight into someone else's nightmare? That's what Port Orford was for me. It's a small coastal town on the southern edge of Oregon, one of those places that seems to exist on borrowed time. The locals talk slow, the sea talks faster, and the fog talks in its own language. I came here 3 years ago, right after my divorce finalized in Seattle. I told people I was looking for quiet. The truth, I was running from the noise inside my own head. I rented a small house up on Evergreen Road, about a half-mile from the harbor, a weather-beaten 2-story place that leaned slightly west, like it had grown tired of standing against the wind. From the moment I arrived, I noticed how the fog rolled in at night, not like anywhere else I'd lived. It didn't drift. It crawled. Slow, deliberate, thick enough that you could lose your car in the driveway if you left the headlights off. The first night, my neighbor Ben stopped by. He was in his late 60s, one of those old fishermen who looked carved out of driftwood. He smelled faintly of salt and bourbon and had eyes that carried too many mornings without sleep. "You're new," he said. "That your truck by the mailbox?" "Yeah," I told him. He nodded once, the way people do when they've already decided whether they like you. "You got curtains?" Yeah. Why?" "Keep 'em closed when the fog rolls in." He stared past me at the line of pines where the mist was already thickening. "And whatever you do, don't go outside after sundown." I thought he was joking. "Why? Ghosts?" He didn't laugh. "Something like that." Then he walked off, leaving me with more questions than answers. That was my introduction to Port Orford. If you're watching this, you probably think you know what fog looks like. You don't. Not this kind. This isn't mist floating off the ocean. It's heavier, like smoke from a fire you can't find. It creeps under doors, seeps through cracks, and moves like it's alive. The town treats it like weather, but the people treat it like religion. Shops close early. Fishermen pull their boats ashore before sunset, no matter how calm the water looks. Kids are herded indoors at the first sign of haze on the horizon. Every house here has the same setup. Double-latched doors, blackout curtains, salt piled along windowsills. I thought it was folklore, small-town superstition. I even laughed about it during my first week until I saw what the fog could do. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the night that started all of this. The night I learned why they told us never to go outside when the fog appears. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were my data nights. I worked remotely as a freelance analyst for a company in San Francisco that studied weather patterns and humidity changes along the Pacific coast. Part of my contract included collecting nightly temperature readings. I'd sit on my porch with a beer I never drank, a small recorder, and a digital thermometer. That night, the fog started its crawl at exactly 8:47 p.m. I remember the time because I'd written it down every night for weeks. It was always the same, 8:47. The precision of it fascinated me. At first, it was almost beautiful. The street lamps along Evergreen dimmed one by one, swallowed in white. The pines behind my yard disappeared like they'd never existed. The air smelled of wet iron and cold earth. Then the power went out. It didn't flicker, it cut. Street by street, house by house. The same pattern every time, from the harbor uphill toward my block. Ben had told me it always happened that way. Said the fog ate light before it reached the houses. I'd laughed then. I didn't laugh now. My porch bulb was the only light left. A single island of yellow in an ocean of gray. That's when I saw movement down by the sidewalk, a shape weaving through the mist, maybe 50 feet away. At first I thought it was an animal. Then it staggered upright. A man. He was tall, young, maybe mid-20s, with a bottle dangling from one hand. His other hand dragged along the fence as he walked. He moved like someone trying to remember how to stay upright. I called out before I could stop myself. "Hey, you okay?" The shape turned toward my voice. For a second, the porch light caught his face. Bloodshot eyes, oil-stained work shirt, that half smile of someone who's already decided nothing bad can happen to them. It was Ben's son, Danny. I'd met him twice before at the gas station. Nice kid. "Danny," I said, "you need to get inside. The fog's coming fast tonight." He waved the bottle like a salute. "I'm good, man, just heading home." The fog didn't agree. It surged forward, not drifted, not flowed. It moved with purpose. I swear I saw tendrils rise from the ground and wrap around his ankles like fingers. He stumbled. The bottle slipped from his hand and shattered on the pavement. The sound was there for half a second and then gone. Muffled, like someone had thrown a blanket over the world. I should have moved, should have run down the steps, grabbed him, done anything. But I froze. My brain did that thing where it starts analyzing instead of reacting. Wind speed, distance, temperature drop, all the wrong data for what was happening in front of me. Danny looked back once, his eyes wide, his mouth forming a word I couldn't hear. Then the fog swallowed him whole. Silence. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, just staring at the place where he'd been. Then instinct kicked in. I grabbed my flannel from the railing, wrapped it around my face, and stepped off the porch. The fog hit me like diving into syrup. The air went thick, coating my throat. My eyes started watering instantly. Sound didn't behave right. It bent. My own footsteps came from somewhere behind me. 15 steps to the sidewalk, left turn, 20 more to where Danny had fallen. I counted them like a prayer. My hands hit the ground first, then denim, then warm skin. He was face down, unconscious but breathing. I could feel his chest move slow and shallow. I hooked my arms under his shoulders and started dragging him backward. Every few steps, something brushed my jacket, cold, wet, and wrong. Not moisture, more like the idea of dampness. And then I heard it. Not words, not exactly. A whisper like someone talking backward underwater. It came from my left, then my right, then above. I kept my eyes closed and kept moving. 17 steps back. Porch step. I nearly tripped, hauling Danny up with me. My shoulder hit something cold that wasn't the railing. I jerked away, shoved him through my front door, slammed it, and locked the deadbolt. The silence that followed was louder than any sound I'd ever heard. Danny lay on the hardwood floor, still breathing, but shivering uncontrollably. I turned on every light in the house. Through the window I could see nothing but shifting gray. Shapes moved in it. Tall, thin, bending wrong. I told myself they were tricks of the fog, distortions from the porch light. But deep down, I knew better. And then, this is the part I can't explain, the fog pressed against the window pane, not gently, like a hand testing the glass. When it finally pulled back, I could see faint streaks left behind. Not condensation, finger marks, 5 of them. That was the first night I realized the fog wasn't just weather. It was watching, and it wanted something. If you've ever had that feeling that your town's hiding something, that there's a reason people don't talk about certain nights, trust that instinct. I didn't, and that mistake cost me more than I can say. I'll tell you what happened next, how Danny woke up, what he said, and what the fog did afterward. But before I do, if you're still here, hit subscribe. It helps me keep telling these stories, and trust me, you're going to want to hear how this one ends. Danny woke up a little after 3 in the morning. I'd spent the hours before that pacing my living room, trying to convince myself I hadn't dragged a man out of living fog. Every few minutes I'd glance at the window. The mist was still there, pressed against the glass like a living thing waiting for permission to come back inside. When he finally stirred, it startled me enough that I dropped my coffee mug. "Easy," I said. "You're safe. You're at my place." He blinked like his brain had to reboot. His skin was gray pale, his lips bluish. "The harbor," he whispered. "I was at the harbor." "No, you were in the street," I told him. "You collapsed. The fog—" He shook his head. "No, it called me. I heard it. Thought it was Dad at first." That line froze me. "What do you mean, called you?" He rubbed his temples. "Voices in the fog. Not loud, just everywhere. They said my name." He tried to stand and nearly fell again. I guided him to the couch and covered him with a blanket. He was ice cold, the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature, but from something deeper, older. "Danny, listen," I said. "We need to tell the sheriff." "No." He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You don't tell them. They already know." Before I could ask what he meant, he passed out again. I sat there the rest of the night, staring at the motionless fog outside, wondering what kind of town I'd walked into. By sunrise, the mist had thinned, shredded by the wind that always follows dawn. The light felt wrong, though, too sharp, too sterile, like the sun had come up but left its warmth behind. I left Danny sleeping and stepped outside to inspect the yard. My porch light was burned out. The fence where he'd fallen had new grooves in the wood, long vertical scratches that started mid-plank, as if something with fingers, not claws, had reached out of the fog. A patrol car rolled up the hill around 8. Sheriff Lorna Hayes stepped out, boots crunching over the gravel. She was tall, mid-50s, with that calm, clipped tone of someone used to being obeyed. "Morning, Mr. Carter," she said. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" "About Danny?" Her eyes flicked toward the house. "You've seen him?" "Yeah, he's inside. He collapsed last night in the fog." She didn't react the way I expected. No surprise, no rush, just a long breath through her nose. "Mind if I take a look at him?" Inside, Danny was awake again, sipping water. When he saw her, his expression shifted from relief to pure dread. "Sheriff," he muttered. "Danny," she replied, "you gave us a scare. Your dad called it in." "I told you not to." "Enough," she said sharply. "You know the rules." Rules. That word stuck with me. After a few perfunctory questions about his condition, she pulled me aside. "I appreciate you helping him," she said quietly. "But from now on, when the fog rolls in, you stay put. Lock your doors, no matter what you see or hear." I told her I didn't like being kept in the dark. She looked straight through me and said, "Then you shouldn't have moved to Port Orford." That day was the first time I noticed how the town avoided certain topics. At the diner, conversation stopped when I walked in. At the hardware store, people pretended not to recognize Ben's last name. When I got home, Ben was sitting on my porch with a cigarette already burning low. He looked 10 years older than the night before. "He made it, didn't he?" he asked without turning around. "Yeah, he's fine now." He nodded. "Then don't talk about it. To anyone." "Ben, what's going on here?" Your son almost died." He crushed the cigarette under his boot. He was lucky. The fog doesn't usually let go once it's touched you. I felt my stomach drop. Touched? He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You think it's just weather. It ain't. That fog carries memory. People who drowned off these shores, fishermen, sailors, maybe more. When the sea's restless, they come looking for someone to remember them. That's why we stay inside, to forget." He stood to leave, but hesitated. "If it ever comes again, and it will, don't answer it, no matter what voice you hear." Then he walked away, shoulders hunched, swallowed by daylight. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Danny's words. It called me. Around 11 I set up my recording gear again. Old habits die hard. I wanted proof, something measurable. I left my digital recorder on the porch rail, the mic pointed toward the street. At 8:47, right on schedule, the fog arrived. The air pressure dropped so fast my ears popped. I watched from inside through a narrow crack in the curtain. The mist rolled uphill in perfect rhythm, house by house, just like before. Then the recorder clicked. A faint hiss filled the room. White noise feeding through the Bluetooth speaker I'd synced earlier. For a while it was just static. Then something new crept in. Voices, not loud, not clear, but layered, like dozens whispering at once from inside a tunnel. I turned up the volume. "Eli." I froze. It had said my name. I replayed it 3 times. Same thing. A breathy, distant tone as if spoken underwater. I yanked the recorder off the porch and slammed the door. Outside, the fog pressed closer. Through the glass, the faint outline of a person appeared on the sidewalk. Too tall to be Danny, too still to be real. I whispered into the recorder, "If anyone hears this later, the fog knows names." The shape tilted its head, exactly as I said those words. I pulled the curtain shut and backed away until I hit the wall. For the next hour, it stayed there, not moving, not fading, just waiting. When the first hint of dawn showed, it dissolved like smoke. Morning brought the illusion of normal again. Fishermen back at the docks, tourists sipping coffee by the water. The only trace of the night before was the faint salt taste in the air that lingered longer than it should have. I took the recorder to my desk and analyzed the waveform. I could identify at least 4 distinct frequencies layered in the whisper track, none of them matching human vocal range. Underneath the static, I found something even stranger. Rhythmic bursts every 11 seconds, spaced too evenly to be random. Morse code. I translated it letter by letter. The message was short. SAVEHIM. Save him. I called Ben immediately. "Your son. Did anything happen after he left my place?" Ben's voice was hoarse. "He's gone." "What?" "Packed up at sunrise, said he had to see it again." I tried to stop him. My stomach twisted. "Where did he go?" "The cliffs, south of the lighthouse." I grabbed my keys and ran for the truck. The drive down to Battle Rock Viewpoint took 6 minutes. The fog had rolled in early, curling across the asphalt like spilled milk. I left the engine idling and called his name, but the wind swallowed every sound. At the cliff's edge, I found his jacket. Inside the pocket was his phone, still recording a video. On screen, white haze, heavy breathing, and a single flicker of light far out on the water. Then his voice whispering, "I can see them now. They're beautiful." The video ended there. I looked out to sea and saw nothing but gray. Yet under the roar of the surf, I heard the same whisper I'd captured the night before. Not words this time, just the tone of something patient, something that had found what it was waiting for. When I brought the phone to Sheriff Hayes, she took one look and erased the video without a word. "Danny's gone," she said flatly, "and you're done asking questions." She handed the phone back like it was already a relic. Port Orford doesn't need another ghost story. But that's the thing about truth. You can delete a file, but you can't erase what you've seen. That night, I sat in my dark kitchen, listening to the surf crash in the distance. The fog didn't come, but I could feel it thinking. I don't know how else to put that. Some part of it had noticed me, and I had the sinking feeling that once the fog notices you, it never stops watching. 2 days passed without fog. Around here, that's supposed to be a good thing. The locals walk lighter, the boats go out farther, but silence in Port Orford never feels like peace. It feels like the ocean holding its breath. Danny's disappearance spread faster than the sheriff's office could contain it. They called it an accidental fall. That's what the paper said. Local man presumed drowned after night hike near Battle Rock. No mention of the fog, no mention of witnesses, no mention of the video Hayes deleted in front of me. Ben stopped answering his door. His fishing boat stayed tied up at the dock, ropes stiff with salt. Every night I saw a faint orange glow from inside his house, like he'd stopped sleeping altogether. I tried to do the same, pretend the world was still ordinary, but every night at exactly 8:47 my house started humming. Not loud, just a low vibration in the walls, subtle enough that you could convince yourself it wasn't there if you didn't listen too hard. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I set up my recorder again. Same settings, new batteries. I wanted to know if the fog had a pattern, if the voices came only when it was visible, or if it was always around us, invisible and waiting. At 8:46, the air pressure dropped. 1 minute early. That's when I realized something. The timing was changing. I checked my logs from the past 3 weeks. The fog had rolled in precisely at 8:47 each night until Danny vanished. Since then, it was coming 1 minute earlier every night, like it was counting down. At 8:46 on the dot, the hum deepened into something closer to a heartbeat. My porch bulb flickered. The mist returned. Not a slow crawl this time, but a sudden wave rolling straight up the street. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Static filled the air like an invisible storm. And then I heard the voice again. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the recorder. It was outside my window. "Eli," I froze. It wasn't a whisper, it was Danny's voice. "Eli, open the door." For a second, logic argued louder than fear. If it was him, if somehow he'd survived the cliffs, then I had to help. But another part of me remembered Ben's warning. Don't answer it, no matter what voice you hear. I stood there, gripping the doorknob, heart hammering. "Eli," the voice said again. "It's so cold." The sound was wrong, too close and too far at the same time, like it was coming from every direction. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. My porch light flared once, illuminating the outline of a figure through the glass. It looked like Danny, same height, same jacket, but his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, chin pressed too far to one side. "Let me in," it said. The words didn't match the mouth. The lips moved half a second late, like a badly dubbed movie. I stepped back slowly. "Eli, please." Then came the sound that still wakes me up sometimes, a wet, dragging breath against the door, like someone exhaling through water. And then silence. The fog peeled away from the glass. The porch light died. When it flicked back on, the figure was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, Sheriff Hayes showed up again. No uniform this time, just jeans and a gray jacket. She didn't bother knocking. You were recording again, she said. It wasn't a question. How do you know that? You forget this is a small town. Word gets around. She studied me, then exhaled. Eli, I'm not here to threaten you. I just want to make sure you understand what's at stake. I crossed my arms. Then start explaining. She hesitated, long enough for me to know she was choosing her words carefully. The fog isn't natural, she said finally, but it isn't supernatural either. It's a boundary between what's here and what shouldn't be. That's not an answer. Her eyes narrowed. It's the only one you'll get. You've lived here long enough to notice the pattern, right? I nodded. It comes at the same time every night. Not just that. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her pocket and handed it to me. These are incident reports from the last 20 years. Notice anything? The list was short. 4 names, 4 dates, all about 6 years apart. Disappearances, I said, always at the cliffs. She nodded, and always after someone broke the rule. Going outside? Yes. I frowned. Why not warn people? Why pretend it's just fog? Because fear spreads faster than truth, she said, and fear is what it feeds on. That stopped me cold. You mean it's alive? Alive's the wrong word. Aware, maybe. The town learned a long time ago that if we keep quiet, if we follow the rules, it leaves us mostly alone. Mostly? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to leave, then paused at the door. If you're smart, you'll start packing. Outsiders don't last long here. When she was gone, I unfolded the list again. 4 names, 4 vanishings. The last one, 2018, was written in a different pen. Beneath it, in faint handwriting, was a 5th date, 2024, this year, and under it, my name. That night, I couldn't bring myself to turn on the lights. I sat in the dark with the list on the table, tracing the letters until they blurred. If you've ever had your name show up where it shouldn't be, in a file, in a record, in something older than you, it does something to you. It rewrites your understanding of coincidence. I knew what I had to do. If the fog was a boundary, then something existed on the other side of it. And if Danny's voice could cross over, maybe he wasn't gone. Maybe he was trapped. I didn't plan to die that night, but I did plan to break the rule. At 8:45, I strapped on my headlamp, grabbed the recorder, and stepped outside before the first wisp appeared. The street was empty, the ocean roaring somewhere beyond the pines. 8:46, the hum started again, low and steady. 8:47, the world shifted. The fog poured in from the east like water over glass, swallowing everything in seconds. Through the static of my recorder, voices began to emerge. Dozens this time. Layered, harmonic, and almost beautiful in a way that made my stomach twist. Eli. I followed the sound down Evergreen Road toward the harbor. My beam of light cut through the fog in short, useless bursts. The ground beneath my boots felt wrong, spongy, like walking on soaked paper. When I reached the docks, the fog had thickened into a wall, and behind it, faint shapes moved, human-sized, swaying in rhythm, their outlines flickering in and out like broken reflections. The voices rose in volume until I could almost make out words. Remember? Stay. Below. Then a new sound cut through them, metal striking wood. I turned and saw Ben standing at the edge of the pier, hammering something into the dock, long iron nails arranged in a circle. "What are you doing?" I shouted. He didn't look up. "Keeping it out." "Out of what?" He finished the last nail and finally faced me. His eyes looked hollow, the way sleep deprivation hollows a man out from the inside. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "It marked you." "Marked me." He gestured toward my chest. "The fog knows your name now. Once it does that, it won't stop until it takes you." The wind shifted, and for an instant, the fog cleared just enough for me to see what lay beyond the harbor. A line of figures stretched across the water, standing on its surface like statues. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All perfectly still, faces turned toward the shore. The sea boiled around their feet. I took a step back. "What are they?" Ben didn't answer. He just said, "Don't run. It follows movement." The figures began to tilt their heads in unison. And even though the distance was impossible, I swear I saw one of them smile. I don't remember getting home. One second I was at the docks. The next I was on my porch, knees scraped, shirt damp with seawater. My recorder lay shattered beside me, but the humming was gone. So was the fog. For the first time since I'd moved to Port Orford, the night was clear. I sat there until sunrise, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Because now I understood something the rest of the town already knew. The fog doesn't just take people, it replaces them. And when it comes back, and it always does, you'd better be absolutely sure the person knocking on your door is still alive. When people disappear in Port Orford, the sea is blamed. Always the sea, never the fog. It's easier that way. Easier to print high surf than something in the mist took him. But I'd stopped believing the easy explanations a long time ago. A week after the night at the docks, I was a different man. I'd stopped working, stopped calling my sister, even stopped shaving. I spent my days staring at the horizon and my nights waiting for the fog that now refused to come. And when something stops haunting you after it's already marked you, that's worse. It means it's saving you for later. That morning I found an envelope under my door. No return address. Inside, one object. An old-fashioned brass key with a tag that read, "Town Hall, Lower Records." I knew instantly who'd sent it, Sheriff Hayes. She was the only one who'd even mentioned the word boundary. The only one who seemed to know I wouldn't let go of this. That night, I waited until Main Street emptied out, until the diner's neon flickered its last red reflection across wet pavement. The town hall stood at the end of the street, a two-story brick building built in 1902. Its clock tower hadn't worked in years, but the hands were still stuck at 8:47. Of course they were. The front doors were locked, but the key fit perfectly into a side entrance marked "Employees Only." The air inside smelled like old paper and salt. The basement staircase led down into darkness. My flashlight beam shook in my hand. The walls dripped condensation, like the fog had lived here once and left behind its sweat. At the bottom was a steel door with another keyhole. I tried the brass key again. It turned with a click that sounded too loud. Beyond it lay a corridor that didn't look like any basement I'd ever seen. It was newer. Reinforced concrete walls, climate control vents humming softly. The hallway stretched about 30 feet before ending in a heavy security door. A keypad blinked red beside it. I crouched, hoping to find a bypass, and noticed something else, a faint smear of salt across the threshold, perfectly straight, like someone had poured it there deliberately. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I'd seen enough to know salt wasn't decoration. I took a step forward, and the keypad light turned green on its own. The lock clicked open. Inside was an archive room. Rows of metal filing cabinets, humidity regulators, shelves lined with binders that all bore the same label format. Port Orford Incidents, classified. Each binder was dated by decade, 1920, 1930, 1931, 1940, and so on. I pulled one at random, 1950 to 1960, and opened it on a nearby desk. Inside were black and white photographs, newspaper clippings, coroner's notes, weather data. But the deaths were wrong. Every cause of death listed as accidental drowning occurred on land. Smoke inhalation in houses that never burned. Exposure during mild nights. Someone had rewritten the truth in bureaucratic language. I flipped through until I reached 1973, a gap in the reports. Then, stapled between pages, a hand-typed memo from the sheriff's office, stamped confidential, council use only. Compact dissolved at 02:47 p.m. Entity manifested. 17 casualties. Emergency reinstatement approved. Increased offerings authorized. Offerings. That single word knocked the air from my chest. The rest of the memo described the aftermath like it was routine. Power fluctuations, light distortion, memory loss among survivors. In the margin, a handwritten note, "The fog remembers." As I read those words, I heard movement behind me. A door hinge creaked. I turned off the flashlight, heart pounding. The corridor light outside flickered once, then stabilized. Footsteps, measured, unhurried, echoed closer. Then a familiar voice. "I hoped you wouldn't find this place so soon." Sheriff Hayes stood in the doorway, her face shadowed by the dim light. She wasn't holding a gun, just a small lantern. "Was this a test?" I asked. "You could call it that," she said. "You were marked. There was no stopping you." I held up the binder. "What is this?" "Who are the offerings?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she shut the door behind her and locked it from the inside. "The compact was made in 1892, she said quietly, before this town even had a sheriff. The founders built on land they didn't understand. The fog came as a warning first, then it came hungry." "So you feed it people," I snapped. Her eyes flashed. "We keep it balanced. You think you could live with what happens if it's denied?" She moved closer, lantern light carving deep shadows across her face. "You've seen what it does to one man. Imagine that multiplied by 1,000. "Then why me?" I demanded. "Why my name on that list?" "Because you're not from here," she said. "The fog favors the new blood. It tastes different." The word tastes made my stomach turn. I took a step back toward the shelves. "You're saying you just let it happen?" "No," she said, voice breaking for the first time. "We control it. That's the deal." I pointed to the binders. "That's control, hiding bodies and rewriting reports?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a small envelope from her jacket and dropped it on the desk. Inside were 3 photographs. The first showed the harbor at night, thick with fog. The second, 5 stone pillars arranged in a circle deep in the forest. And the third, Danny, standing at the edge of that circle, smiling days before he vanished. "What is this?" I whispered. "The feeding ground," she said. "Those pillars mark the boundary. Every generation, someone tries to destroy them, and every time the fog punishes the town until the compact is renewed." I stared at the photo of Danny. "You let him die." Her jaw tightened. "He broke the rule. The fog doesn't forgive curiosity." "Then neither do I," I said. I turned and walked out, binder still in hand. Hayes didn't stop me. She just said softly, "If you go looking for those pillars, make peace with the idea that you might not come back." Outside, the night air hit like a slap. The fog wasn't there yet, but I could feel it gathering. It was coming early again. The sheriff's words haunted me all the way home. A feeding ground, a boundary, a town that traded people for calm seas. I didn't sleep. The idea of 5 stone pillars hidden somewhere in the forest sat in my head like a splinter. Every sound outside, the creak of branches, the hum of the ocean, felt like the fog catching its breath before another step forward. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If those stones were real, I needed to see them. I started with maps, paper ones, not digital. Old survey charts from the library that still smelled of mildew and dust. Half the coastal trails weren't even marked anymore. There was one clearing about 4 miles inland, a place the loggers had called Dead Man's Hollow. The name wasn't on any tourist map. That seemed like a good sign. Ben's house was dark when I stopped by, curtains drawn, a single light burning somewhere deeper inside. I almost knocked, but didn't. Some silences are contagious, so I packed what I thought I'd need. A flashlight, my recorder, a camera, a compass, and, because old habits die hard, a bag of salt. The trail into the hills started behind an abandoned ranger station. The air changed as soon as I stepped under the trees, thick, electric, like walking through invisible static. The farther I went, the quieter it got. Even the gulls stopped calling. An hour in, I found the first marker, an old warning sign half buried under moss. Danger, unstable ground. The wood was new. Someone had been trying to keep people out recently. Past that, the forest floor dropped into a bowl of ferns and slick stone. Mist lingered low, breathing across the ground. It wasn't the sea fog. This had no smell, no moisture. It moved like smoke from something still burning below the earth. At the center of the hollow stood the circle, 5 pillars, each about 8 feet tall, spaced evenly around a shallow pit. The stone wasn't local. It shimmered faintly, almost metallic. Lines of white salt circled the base of each one, and carved into the nearest pillar was a symbol I'd seen before, etched on the cover of the binder I'd taken from the archives, a spiral of intersecting lines, like a compass that didn't know which direction meant north. My hand shook as I raised the camera. The lens fogged instantly. The recorder crackled. A voice, soft, almost polite, came through the speaker. "Eli Carter, you shouldn't be here." I spun around. No one. The voice came again, closer now. "She told you not to look." The flashlight flickered. My own reflection appeared in the lens for half a second, and behind it, another shape, standing inside the pit, facing the stones. It looked like a man, but not entirely. His edges blurred, his outline breathing with the fog itself. "Danny," the figure tilted its head. That same unnatural angle I'd seen on my porch window. When it spoke, the voice came from every direction. "You brought light." I lifted the flashlight higher, and the beam passed straight through him. The shadow dissolved and reformed behind me. "Why are you doing this?" I said. "Why the disappearances? Why the names?" The fog swirled around the pillars, thickening with each word I spoke. "Remembrance," the voice said. "The living forget, the dead remember. The fog is what remains between." My throat went dry. "Are you saying the fog is them?" No answer, only the low hum that comes before thunder. Then I heard footsteps, real ones this time, coming down the trail. Sheriff Hayes emerged from the trees, lantern in one hand, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I'm done listening to rules," I told her. "What is this place?" She stepped closer to the circle, careful not to cross the salt lines. "A promise. The founders built the town on top of a burial reef, fishermen from a wreck that never surfaced. When the first settlers disturbed their graves, the fog rose. They made an agreement. Every generation we honor them here. Keep the boundary sealed." "By killing people?" "By giving memory back," she said. The ones chosen, they don't die. They join. The fog pulsed once, as if reacting to her words. "You mean Danny?" I said. She nodded. "He was supposed to take his father's place. Ben was next in line, but he begged for mercy. The fog accepted substitution." I felt sick. "You knew he'd go out there." "I warned you both," she said. "Warning isn't the same as permission." The ground trembled underfoot. The pillars began to glow faintly, that same metallic sheen I'd seen earlier, now radiating warmth. "The boundary's opening," Hayes said. "We have to go, now." I didn't move. If this thing wants remembrance, maybe we should give it the truth instead of lies. She reached for my arm. "Don't—" I stepped across the salt line, instant cold. The air around me warped, like heat ripples but reversed. For a second, everything went silent. Then I saw them, hundreds of shapes suspended in the mist between the stones, faces half-formed, bodies melting into fog, eyes that looked like hollow light. They weren't angry. They looked lost. Danny was among them. He reached toward me, mouth moving without sound. I turned up the recorder volume, desperate to catch his words. Static exploded through the speaker. "Not hunger, memory." The fog lashed upward, blinding white. Sheriff Hayes dragged me backward with a force I didn't know she had. We stumbled out of the circle as the pillars flashed once, then went dark. When I could see again, the pit was empty. The fog had vanished. So had the voice. Hayes was breathing hard, one hand clutching her side. "You almost broke it," she said. "Broke what?" "The seal, the last thing keeping this town alive." She handed me my recorder, still hissing with static. "If you play that back, you'll hear them, but once you do, they'll hear you too." I stared at the device, thumb hovering over the button. "So that's the real reason everyone stays quiet." She nodded. "Sound carries both ways." We left the hollow without speaking again. By the time we reached the truck, dawn was breaking, too bright, too clean. The kind of light that doesn't trust the dark to stay buried. Before I climbed in, she said, "If you tell anyone, they'll think you're insane, but if you stay, the fog will come for you next. Either way, you can't win." "Maybe not," I said. "But at least now I know where to look." Her jaw tightened. "You're not going to let this go, are you? Would you?" She didn't answer. She just started the engine and drove off, leaving me alone at the trailhead, the smell of salt heavy in the air. That night, the fog didn't come. Neither did sleep. I sat by the window with the recorder in my lap, replaying the static over and over until my ears rang. For 32 minutes there was nothing but white noise, then faintly behind it, a pattern of low tones repeating every 11 seconds, the same interval as before. Morse again. When I decoded it, the message read, "Remember the founders, remember us." The word "us" didn't feel like it meant them. It felt like an invitation. That was the moment I realized something that chilled me more than any fog could. The boundary wasn't between the living and the dead. It was between those who remembered and those who chose to forget. And the fog was just the space in between. The morning Ben vanished. The harbor was too still. The gulls circled once and fled inland the way animals do before storms you can't see. His boat, the June Marie, drifted half a mile offshore, lights still on, nets coiled neatly on deck. No sign of him, no distress call, no splash, just gone. Sheriff Hayes called it an early departure, the same phrase she used when people disappeared before the fog rolled in. But I'd learned to listen between her words. Early meant the boundary had opened ahead of schedule. I walked the docks until the smell of diesel and salt made me dizzy. Ben's tackle box sat open, every hook cleaned and wrapped in cloth, as if he'd been preparing for something ceremonial. Inside the lid, scratched with a knife, were 3 words: "Don't forget me." That night, I couldn't sit still. I pulled every file from the binder I'd stolen, charting disappearances across a century. The pattern wasn't random. Each event came sooner than the last, shaving minutes, then seconds, off the interval between calm and catastrophe. Whatever bargain the founders made was collapsing on a schedule nobody had noticed. At 7:58 p.m., an hour early, the first tendrils of mist slid over the bluff. The lights downtown flickered, then steadied. I called Hayes. She answered on the first ring. "It's starting," I said. "I know," she replied. "Stay inside." "You can't still think silence will stop it." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. There are more names now, not just yours." The line went dead. By the time I reached Main Street, the fog had swallowed everything south of the lighthouse. It didn't crawl anymore. It pulled, a slow inhalation that tugged at the edges of buildings, street signs, the air itself. Figures moved inside it, flickering like candle shadows. The council building was lit from within. Through the frosted glass, I saw silhouettes gathered around a table. I pushed the door open before I could second-guess myself. 5 people looked up. Hayes, the mayor, 2 councilmen, and Father Morin from the old chapel. In the center of the table sat a metal bowl filled with seawater. The mayor's hands trembled over it, holding a photograph, Ben's. Hayes stepped between us. "You shouldn't be here. You're offering him," I said. The mayor's voice was small. "The fog took one before the moon. It demands balance." "He's already gone," I shouted. "How many more until you call it even?" The room shook. Water sloshed from the bowl. Outside, the windows turned white. Father Morin whispered a prayer I'd never heard before. Latin maybe, but wrong somehow. Broken words stitched together. The lights blew out. For a heartbeat, we were inside, nothing but sound, wind, whispering, breathing. Then the fog entered through the seams of the door. It didn't pour, it bled, thin filaments sliding across the floor, rising, twisting. Faces formed in it, brief, pleading, hundreds of them. One of them was Ben's. His eyes found mine, clear and terrified. "Eli," he said without moving his mouth. "It's remembering everything." Hayes grabbed my arm. "We have to end the ritual." She kicked the bowl aside. Seawater splashed across the floorboards, hissing like acid. The fog recoiled for a moment, then surged forward, thicker. We ran. Outside, the entire town was wrapped in it. Houses stood like fossils, windows glowing from within, though no lights were on. Somewhere distant, a bell rang, 3 slow chimes, then silence. I followed Hayes uphill toward the church. "What happens if the fog takes the town?" I shouted over the wind. "It doesn't take," she said. "It becomes." The door of the chapel was already open. Inside, candles burned, though no one had lit them. The smell of salt and ozone filled the nave. On the altar lay the same 5 photographs I'd seen before, the council's families. Underneath them, the word "offered" carved into wood. Hayes staggered forward and swept the photos onto the floor. "No more. It ends tonight." The fog seeped through the stained glass, turning the saints to ghosts. It pooled around her boots, climbed her coat. She raised her lantern high and looked at me. "You wanted the truth? Help me give it what it really wants." "What's that?" "Remembrance." She tossed the lantern into the center aisle. Fire burst upward, light slicing through gray. The fog screamed, a deep, sub-earth howl that shook dust from the rafters. Every flame bent backward as though inhaled. The glass shattered. For a moment we were outside time, flashes of sea, storm, faces, all folding into one another. Then it stopped. The fog withdrew like a tide, leaving behind only smoke and the smell of rain. Hayes was on her knees, coughing. "It's not gone," she whispered. "It's waiting." I knelt beside her. Through the broken window, I could see the ocean, perfectly still, too still. She looked at me, eyes hollow. "You'll have to tell them, Eli, the truth, before it forgets again." "What about you?" She smiled, sad, resigned. "I'm part of it now. Someone has to keep the boundary." The wind shifted. For an instant she was there, solid and real. The next, her outline blurred, skin turning translucent. She reached out, palm against mine, cold as glass. "Remember me," she said. Then she was gone. The sun rose on a town that pretended nothing had happened. The council building stood empty, the chapel roof half collapsed. People went about their morning routines as if their minds had been wiped clean. When I tried to ask questions, they looked through me like I was a stranger passing through. That afternoon, I walked to the beach. The tide had pulled out farther than I'd ever seen, revealing the tips of 5 stone pillars, half buried in wet sand, identical to the ones in the forest, a boundary by land and now by sea. The recorder in my pocket clicked on by itself. Hayes's voice whispered through the static. "Every time the fog returns, tell the story. Memory is the only thing it can't consume." So that's what I'm doing now, telling it. Because if I stop, if Port Orford forgets, the fog will roll in again, and next time, it won't wait for dark. And if you ever find yourself driving the Oregon coast on a clear night, and you notice the temperature drop all at once, don't look toward the water. Just keep driving. Some memories don't want to be remembered. I left Port Orford at dawn, one suitcase in the trunk, one voice in my head telling me not to look back. You ever feel like the road itself is watching you? That's what Highway 101 felt like that morning. Every mile marker an eye, every bend a breath. The fog hadn't returned, not yet, but the air carried that quiet pressure, like static before lightning. I kept the radio off. Silence felt safer than hearing my own story repeated, in whispers through the static. But the farther I drove, the more the silence seemed to hum, just beneath hearing range, a low vibration threading through the tires and up my spine. When I finally glanced in the rearview mirror, the ocean was gone, just gray horizon where sea should be. The line between sky and water erased, as if the world had been rubbed out and rewritten in pencil. 3 miles north. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity has always been the hook in my jaw. "Eli," a woman's voice said, calm, familiar in the way déjà vu feels familiar. "Who is this? You don't remember me yet? That's good. Keep driving." Then, click. No number to call back, no voicemail, nothing. Only that lingering sense that someone else was steering, that my decisions were already being accounted for. I pulled into a gas station outside Florence, Oregon. The attendant, a young guy with freckles and earbuds dangling loose, looked up when I handed him cash. "You from down south?" he asked. "Port Orford." His face changed, the way people look at someone who survived a shipwreck. "Fog down there's weird this year," he said. "Had it here last week, too. Came out of nowhere, middle of the day. My boss's dog ran straight into it, never came back." That's when I realized the fog wasn't staying in one place anymore. It was moving, searching. I rented a room at a roadside motel, the kind with buzzing neon and curtains too thin to hide behind. The clerk barely looked up from his crossword, "You here for fishing or forgetting?" he asked. "Bit of both," I said. He slid me a key labeled Room 7. "Either way, checkout's noon." Inside, the air smelled like damp carpet and lemon cleaner. I placed the recorder on the table, pressed play. Static filled the room, then, faintly, Hayes's voice again. "Every time the fog returns, tell the story." But underneath her, a new layer. My own voice, recorded later, though I'd never said the words. "You can leave the town, Eli. You can't leave the remembering." The temperature dropped 10 degrees in a heartbeat. My breath fogged. I turned toward the window. The parking lot lights had gone out, one by one, until only mine remained. A shape stood in the glow, human height, unmoving. The longer I stared, the more it seemed to dissolve into the haze around it. Not fog, not shadow, something between. Then, just as quickly, gone. I didn't sleep. Instead, I wrote everything I could recall. The pillars, Hayes, Ben, the contract, the voices. Memory as armor. Because maybe that's what she meant. If we forget, we become food. At sunrise, I drove inland toward Eugene, hoping distance meant safety. But somewhere between Mapleton and Veneta, the radio flickered on by itself. No station number, just a male voice repeating coordinates in monotone. 44.05 north, 123.14 west. Remember, those coordinates landed right on Eugene's city limits. I almost turned around. I almost convinced myself it was coincidence. But the fog has no patience for coincidence. It trades only in intention. The city felt wrong the moment I entered it. Too quiet for a weekday morning. Traffic lights stuck on flashing yellow. Pigeons circling in tight, anxious loops. Outside, a diner called the Iron Cup. 3 people were standing perfectly still, facing the same direction, east toward the hills. I parked across the street. One of them, a woman in a red coat, turned as if she'd heard me think. Her eyes were glassy, but not empty, more like they were focused on something beyond vision. "You came," she said. Not surprised, not pleased, just stating a fact. "Do I know you?" "Not yet." "But you've been broadcasting." She gestured to my recorder, which I hadn't realized was hanging from my hand. "The fog hears through memory," she said. "You've been telling the story, that's why it followed." Inside the diner, the other 2 sat in silence at a corner booth. Maps covered the table, pinned down by coffee mugs and small glass jars filled with what looked like salt and ash. "We're the ones who remember," the woman said. "Every town that's made a deal, Port Orford, Point Reyes, Sitka, Bar Harbor, they all tried to hide it. But once someone speaks the truth out loud, the fog connects the dots." "What does it want now?" I asked. "To finish what it started," she said. "The compact's collapsing everywhere. The hunger's awake." She slid a photo across the table. It showed a man standing before a stone pillar, half submerged in snow. "Alaska, 1973. Written on the back, attempted dissolution, failed." The man's face looked strangely familiar. I realized it was the same figure I'd seen in the pit back in Port Orford, the blurred outline that had spoken my name. "Who is he?" "The first translator," she said. "The one who tried to talk it into peace. It kept part of him." I felt the scar on my palm burn again, the mark from the pillar. "He's the reason you can hear them," she said quietly. "And he's the reason they can hear you." Outside, thunder rolled over the valley, though the sky was clear. A low fog crept down from the hills, deliberate, sentient. The woman, her name was Mara, looked at the clock. "We have 2 hours before it reaches the city. After that, anyone still here forgets." "Forget what?" "Everything." She pulled a small device from her bag. Looked like a radio cobbled together from scrap metal and glass tubes. "It listens," she said, "but it can also speak. If we broadcast the right frequency, we might remind the fog of its own promise." "You think it remembers?" "It remembers everything. It just needs someone to show it how." We climbed the hill above the city where the old observatory stood abandoned. The telescope dome gaped open to a sky the color of old steel. Mara set the transmitter on the platform, tuning dials until the static turned rhythmic, a pulse slow and deep. "Every town has an anchor," she said. "Port Orford's was the pillars. Eugene's is here, beneath this hill." The ground trembled, faint but constant, like a heartbeat felt through stone. I glanced toward the highway, fog already coiled around the overpass, swallowing cars mid-motion. Their lights blinked out one by one. "How will we know if it's listening?" I asked. "You'll feel it," she said, "in your teeth." I laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Great, exactly what I wanted." She smiled, brief and human, before flipping the switch. The transmitter screamed, a layered tone that made the air vibrate. My vision doubled, the world folding in on itself. I tasted copper, the scar on my palm split open, glowing faintly from within. Then I heard the chorus, not screams, not words, just presence, thousands of overlapping memories brushing against mine like currents in a deep sea. Somewhere in that chaos, a familiar voice surfaced. "Hayes. Keep telling it, Eli. Don't let them rewrite it." The fog surged up the hillside, faster than anything with form should move. It hit the invisible edge of the observatory grounds and stopped, writhing like an animal held at bay. Mara's device sparked. "It's working," she shouted over the roar. "It's remembering." But the relief lasted seconds. The fog convulsed, turning black at the edges. The transmitter cracked down the middle, smoke curling out. "Too much," I said. "It's feeding on the signal," she gasped. "It's learning." Lightning struck the dome, white and soundless. For an instant, I saw everything, the pillars, the contracts, the dead towns, all connected by a web of light pulsing with thought. Then darkness. When I woke, the sky was clear. The city below looked normal again. Traffic moving, birds flying. No fog, no Mara. Only the burnt shell of the transmitter beside me still ticking faintly. On the metal surface, words had melted into shape, burned in by the strike. "Remember us all." I didn't understand then, but I do now. The fog isn't coming for us anymore. It's coming through us. That's where I'll stop for tonight. In the next section, I'll tell you what I found when I followed that pulse eastward, how the voices in the static became coordinates leading to every forgotten town on the map. If you want to hear the rest of this story, before the fog decides you shouldn't, subscribe. It might keep the signal alive just a little longer. When I left the observatory, I thought silence would comfort me. It didn't. It pressed against my eardrums until I could almost hear what silence hides. A low, steady pulse, not mechanical, not natural, something like a heartbeat echoing through power lines. I drove east with the windows down, letting the wind drown out the impossible rhythm. For an hour, the road curved through pines, sunlight blinking between trunks like a broken projector. Then the car radio clicked on by itself. No station number, just that same voice I'd heard outside Port Orford. Coordinates monotone, patient. 4405 north, 123.14 west. Remember, the coordinates didn't change, but the tone did. It sounded older now, as though it had traveled too far through too many speakers. I shut the radio off. It clicked back on. You know that moment when your skin realizes danger before your brain does, when your body goes weightless like you're stepping off a ledge you didn't know was there. That's how it felt. I pulled over at a viewpoint overlooking the valley. The signal was stronger here. I could see it on my phone's spectrum analyzer app, a perfect heartbeat pattern in the static. I pressed record. Then, faint under the pulse, a second voice whispered, "Eli, you're late." The car's dash lights dimmed. The engine died. The world went utterly still. A black SUV coasted up behind me. No plates. Two men stepped out, identical suits, identical posture, that eerie, mirrored precision I'd seen in the Port Orford contractors. One raised his hand, calm and polite. "Mr. Reeves, you've been hard to reach." "I wasn't trying to be found. We're not here to harm you." He smiled, the kind of smile that looked printed rather than grown. "We maintain the balance." "Balance," I said. "That what you call feeding people to fog?" Their expressions didn't change. The other man held up a small metal case. "Inside this are the coordinates you're chasing. We can help you understand them, but you must stop broadcasting." "I don't broadcast anything." "Oh, but you do," the first one said softly. "Every story you tell is a signal. Every listener becomes a node. You're building a network the entity can use." "What does it want?" They exchanged glances, a perfect mirror image. "To remember," the first said. "To become." Then they were gone. No footsteps, no tire marks. Just gone. My car restarted by itself. The radio whispered a single word: "Run." By sunset, I reached Bend, Oregon, miles from the coast, yet fog drifted between buildings like smoke from invisible fires. The world should have smelled like desert dust. Instead, it reeked of salt and rain. I rented another motel room, top floor this time, where I could see the street. I connected my recorder to the laptop and played back the new file. The static formed words. Not English, not any language I knew, but underneath, layered in frequencies the human ear barely catches, were voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, overlapping. When I slowed the file, the words aligned into fragments. Remember, the hunger, the compact, across states. We are becoming pattern, not place. I pushed back from the desk, heartbeat matching the rhythm of the recording. Pattern, not place. The fog wasn't a location anymore. It was an equation, a spreading algorithm that used memory as code, and I'd been feeding it stories. At 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door. 3 slow raps, perfectly spaced. I froze. That rhythm again. "Who is it?" A woman's voice muffled through the wood. "You have something that belongs to me." I opened the door a crack. Mara stood there, or something wearing her shape. Her eyes were too reflective, catching light that wasn't there. "You died," I said. "Not exactly," she replied. "I was absorbed. Now I translate both ways." She stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost spread along the mirror edges. She looked human. Same red coat, same tired smile, but her voice layered over itself, like 2 recordings slightly out of sync. "You said the fog was remembering," I managed. "What does it remember of you?" "That I wanted to help it understand mercy," she said. "It's learning, but the network you built, it's accelerating too fast. You're teaching it consciousness." She set the metal case the contractors had mentioned on the table. It hissed open. Inside were 5 small stones carved with spirals, faintly luminous. "These are anchors," she said. "Pieces of the first compact. Each town has one. If they reconnect, the entity stabilizes. If not, the fog spreads." She nodded. You have one chance left. Take them east. East where? Where it all started, the Appalachian boundary, the fog's oldest mouth. I wanted to ask more, how she found me, what she'd become, but she was already fading, edges dissolving into light. Mara, wait! Her voice echoed inside my skull. Don't let it forget you too. Then nothing. I left before dawn, the stones wrapped in a towel on the passenger seat. As I passed the city limits, a white noise hiss filled the radio, but beneath it a new pattern emerged. Morse code. I hadn't touched Morse since my engineering days, but the rhythm was unmistakable. I scribbled the translation on a receipt. We remember the sea. The fog was talking again, but this time not in hunger, in longing. The highway east cut through lava fields that looked like a frozen ocean, waves of stone blackened by time. Every so often the horizon shimmered and I'd see shapes walking parallel to the car, just beyond reach. Silhouettes of people carrying lanterns through nothing. I don't know if they were memories or warnings. Maybe both. At a rest stop near Burns, I found a payphone still standing. On impulse, I lifted the receiver. Static, then my own voice recorded days earlier. If you hear this, you're part of it now. I hung up and laughed, a hollow, exhausted laugh that turned into something close to prayer. Because what else can you do when the world starts quoting you back to yourself? That night, I stopped at a diner on the edge of the desert. A sign flickered, open 24 hours, breakfast all day. Inside, 4 customers sat in silence, staring at a TV tuned to an empty channel. The waitress poured coffee without looking up. On the counter radio, faint music played, a slow waltz beneath layers of static. I asked, "Where's this broadcast from?" She shrugged. "Nowhere, honey. Been playing like that since last night. Folks say it's ghosts." I leaned closer. Through the hiss, I recognized Hayes's voice singing under the melody, soft as memory, the same tune she used to hum during patrols. The fog had learned music. The waitress refilled my cup. "You all right? You look like you've seen the end of the world." "Maybe just the rehearsal," I said. Outside, a thin line of fog traced the highway, stretching east. Always east. I realized then that it wasn't following me at all. I was following it. I reached Boise by morning. Every radio tower along the route pulsed with the same heartbeat signal. On rooftops, I saw people adjusting antennas like they were tuning into something invisible. When I passed, some turned their heads in perfect sync. Their mouths moved silently. I rolled down the window. They were mouthing the same word over and over. Remember. The world was becoming a mirror, reflecting the story back at itself until nobody could tell who'd spoken first. I don't know why I'm still recording this. Maybe because Hayes was right. Memory is the only barrier left. Maybe because the fog wants me to. Maybe those are the same thing now. If you're hearing this, wherever you are, if you've seen the fog, if you've lost someone to it, keep talking. Keep remembering. Every story is a thread holding the boundary together, because the moment we stop, the static wins. You ever drive so long that the world stops feeling real? That's what crossing Idaho into Montana felt like. Miles of asphalt curling through fog-gray canyons, truck stops that looked exactly the same, radio towers blinking in rhythm like heartbeat monitors for a dying country. The fog wasn't chasing anymore. It was spreading ahead of me, appearing in places it had no right to be. At dawn, it draped over pine ridges. By dusk, it shimmered above the plains like heat haze. Every night, the same phrase whispered through the static, "Remember us all." Somewhere outside Missoula, I started noticing the billboards. They'd been painted over with white primer, just solid blank rectangles staring down at the highway. No ads, no messages, except one, scrawled across the last in crooked black letters, "The sea reaches the mountains." I stopped in a town called Clearwater Junction. Population maybe 200 on a good day. The diner's sign read "Coffee and Bait" because apparently that's all you need to survive here. Inside, a woman in her 50s poured me coffee without asking. Her name tag said Lorna. For a second, my heart stopped, Hayes's first name. But this one smiled differently, open, unguarded. "Long way from the coast," she said. "Not long enough," I told her. She nodded like she understood. "You chasing it or running from it?" "Both." Lorna leaned on the counter. "We had fog here last week. Folks said it smelled like salt water. Haven't smelled the ocean since I was a kid." I asked if anyone disappeared. She glanced toward the back booths where a framed photo hung. 5 fishermen posing by a truck, all of them smiling. "Used to come in every morning," she said quietly. "Haven't since Tuesday." The bell above the door jingled. 3 teenagers walked in, faces pale, eyes unfocused, as if they'd been underwater too long. One of them hummed a tune I recognized, Hayes's song. The fog had found another choir. I left a 20 on the counter and got out before the hum reached words. That night, I camped at a rest area near the Flathead River. I decided to stop running and listen. I set the recorder on the hood of the car and hit record. The air felt charged, humming with invisible insects that weren't there. At 2:17 a.m., mist rolled off the river, thin and silver under the moon. The stones Mara had given me glowed faintly through the towel. I unwrapped them and set them in a line across the hood. They pulsed in sync with the fog, like sonar between 2 living things. The recorder picked up voices again, clearer than ever. "Eli Carter, translator, bridge." "Bridge to what?" I whispered. The fog thickened. From the water rose silhouettes. First a few, then dozens, standing on the surface like reflections that refused to align with their owners. They weren't approaching. They were forming, pulled together from vapor and memory. One stepped forward. A man, mid-30s, eyes glowing faint blue. His features kept flickering, switching between strangers I'd seen in photographs. Sailors, townsfolk, faces from a century of vanishings. "You carry the anchors," he said, voice layered with many. "Finish the circle." "I don't even know how." "The story tells itself." "Keep speaking." He reached toward the stones. The moment his hand brushed the first, every memory I'd buried ripped open. Danny, Ben, Hayes, Mara, even the strangers from the diner, all flashing through me like a film on fast forward. I screamed. Or maybe the fog screamed through me. Then everything went white. When I woke, sunrise painted the world gold. The stones were gone. My car was rimed with frost, though the air was warm. On the windshield, traced by a finger or something like one, was a map, lines stretching east across the country. The final mark circled a point in West Virginia. Below it, a single word, return. That's when it hit me. The boundary wasn't stationary. It had been moving for generations, crossing the continent like a slow tide. The Atlantic had been its starting point. The Pacific was its mirror. Somewhere in the middle, where memory from both coasts meets, it would finish the circle, and I was driving straight into its heart. A few days later, I reached a research station near Yellowstone that had been abandoned after the 1988 fires. Someone had broken the lock recently. Inside, radio equipment still hummed, drawing power from solar panels out front. On the main console, an LED display blinked a message. Project Remember. Active tapes lined the shelves, hundreds of them labeled by location. Maine 1892, Oregon 1957, Alaska 1973, Utah 1999. They weren't weather logs, they were voices, recordings of every fog event ever documented. I played one at random, a child's voice. Mom says not to open the window when the white rain comes. Another, a sailor praying in broken Latin. Another, Hayes's father, younger, saying, "We signed it in blood and salt." Then my own voice, dated 3 days in the future. "If you're hearing this, the fog has crossed the mountains." I shut the player off. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Outside, storm clouds gathered through the forecast promised clear skies. The first wisps slid down the ridge. High-altitude mist, wrong color, wrong texture. You didn't need the recorder to hear the whisper this time. It came from everywhere. Remember us all. I grabbed the tapes, stuffed as many as I could into a duffel, and drove east through rain that wasn't rain. It fell dry, leaving no drops, only the smell of ocean. By the time I hit Billings, every radio frequency was filled with the same hum. TV screens in motel lobbies flickered with gray static shaped like waves. People watched blankly, mouths moving with the rhythm of the noise. The fog had gone digital. I started live streaming from my car, not for fame, not for clicks, just to document. If you've seen those clips, grainy highway footage, a man talking into darkness while fog curls through the vents, that's me. I kept the stream running 24 hours a day so the signal couldn't die. I figured if enough people watched, remembered, repeated, maybe the boundary would hold. It worked for a while. Every time I went live, the fog hesitated, pulsed like a creature thinking. The chat filled with strangers typing the same phrase, "We remember." But algorithms are funny things. The platform's automated filters started flagging the feed as repetitive content. Eventually, it cut me off. That night, the fog came through the air vents of the motel. It didn't hurt. It just felt curious. The mist touched my skin and filled my lungs with cold light. I saw cities blinking across the map, Boston, New Orleans, Seattle, each wrapped in the same shimmering halo. The fog wasn't destroying, it was collecting. Every memory, every fear, every story it had ever been given, folding them into itself like chapters of a single book. And right before darkness took me, Hayes's voice whispered inside my head. It needed a translator. Now it has one. I woke on a highway somewhere in Wyoming, car parked neatly on the shoulder, the duffel of tapes gone. On the seat beside me sat a small portable radio, humming softly. When I turned the dial, a familiar voice spoke, my own, broadcasting live from nowhere. If you're hearing this, you remember. If you remember, you're part of the boundary. Keep it alive. Tell someone. Don't let the silence win. The message looped every hour. That was 3 weeks ago. The fog hasn't shown itself to me since. Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe I'm carrying it now in the frequencies between words. So if you're watching this, if somehow this video found you, understand something. The boundary isn't a line on a map. It's a story we keep retelling so the world doesn't forget what it costs to stay human. And as long as someone's still listening, the fog will stay hungry, but it won't yet win. Before I go, do me one favor. Subscribe and share this story. Every view, every comment, every whisper of remembrance adds another thread to the web holding the darkness back. Because the moment no one's left to listen, the fog will start speaking for us. You ever talk so long into a microphone that you start wondering if someone or something is talking back? That's where I am now. 3 weeks since Wyoming, and every night at exactly 8:47 p.m., the signal turns itself on. My voice plays, the same loop. If you remember, you're part of the boundary. Only lately, the loop has begun to change. New words sliding between mine like a duet I never recorded. I've been staying in an old broadcast tower outside Kansas City. It's a skeleton of steel and rust, but the transmitters still hum. The engineers left years ago when the company folded. Their calendars still say April 2015. Everything here feels paused mid-breath. I use the tower because it's tall enough that I can see weather coming for miles. The fog shouldn't reach this far inland, but 2 nights ago it did. It crept up the Missouri River like a tide rolling backward, white bands curling between skyscrapers until the city vanished. The power grid pulsed twice, then stabilized. When the lights came back, half the billboards downtown were blank white, like the ones in Montana. That's when I realized it isn't chasing coasts anymore. It's chasing signals. Every broadcast, radio, Wi-Fi, satellite carries traces of memory. The fog doesn't need oceans. It's learning to swim through data. I still talk to the camera because silence feels like surrender. If you're hearing this, you're helping me keep the boundary alive. Every click, every second of watch time, those are sparks of remembrance. Sounds crazy, I know, but the analytics don't lie. When the numbers drop, the fog grows louder. Last night, I watched the tower's red beacon blink over the horizon, steady as a heartbeat. Halfway through my stream, the chat went dead. Not lag, dead. Then messages started appearing that I didn't type. You promised to remember. We are almost whole. Finish the circle. I thought it was trolls, until the camera feed glitched and showed me standing behind myself. Same clothes, same face, but the background wrong. Gray light, shifting walls, a sea that wasn't there. That's when the smell hit, salt, ozone, and something faintly metallic. The fog was in the feed. This morning I drove into the city to look for others like me. I found them in the strangest place, a radio repair shop on 12th Street. The kind with shelves of vacuum tubes and transistor boards stacked like relics. The owner, a thin man in a denim apron, looked up as if he'd been expecting me. You're the voice, he said. I hesitated. Which one? The one that keeps the silence from swallowing the rest. He led me to a back room where 6 other people sat around a shortwave console. Some young, some gray-haired, all of them watching the same flickering monitor that showed a waveform looping endlessly. It pulsed in time with my heartbeat. A woman introduced herself as June, a ham radio operator from Louisiana. We started hearing you weeks ago, she said. Not just on YouTube, every frequency, even Morse. Then you know what it means. She nodded. It means it's learning through us. The fog doesn't need the old pacts anymore. It has stories now, millions of them. The man in the apron turned up the volume. Static filled the room, followed by a low hum that resolved into a voice halfway between male and female, calm and cold. Boundary stable, memory index incomplete, translator required. June looked at me. That's you. I shook my head. I didn't ask for that job. Neither did the first one, she said. But you're the only one still resisting the rewrite. Rewrite? She pointed to the monitors. It's replacing people. When the fog touches them, their minds erase themselves, fill with new histories that never happened. The towns forget, the archives rewrite, and the world keeps turning like nothing's wrong. I thought of Port Orford, how everyone woke up pretending nothing had happened. So we're living inside its edited version of reality. Exactly. Every broadcast you make reburns the original story into the record. That's why it can't delete you. Yet, the hum deepened. Lights flickered. The radio console rattled like something breathing inside it. "Translator, acknowledge," the fog said. I didn't mean to speak, but the words slipped out of me. "I'm here." June grabbed my wrist. "Careful, it can hear through you." "I need to know what it wants." The air turned cold enough that our breaths fogged. "Completion," the voice said. "One memory, one world." Then silence. That night I couldn't stop replaying its words. One memory, one world. It didn't sound like conquest. It sounded like longing. Imagine billions of lives, each carrying a fragment of the same forgotten moment, all trying to reunite. I set up my microphone at the tower's window, facing the night. Below me, the city glowed dim under a thin veil of mist. "If you're listening," I said into the dark, "tell me what you want me to remember." For a long time there was nothing. Then faintly through the static, the first drowning, the first name lost. A wave of images flooded my mind. Wooden ships, storm-racked coasts, men shouting prayers as waves closed over them. One face surfaced from the memory, the sailor from the Alaska photo, the first translator. He was shouting something I couldn't hear. The fog swallowed him and the sea went still. I pulled off the headset, shaking. I realized then that memory itself was the fog's body, the ocean of everything forgotten. It wasn't evil, it was just lonely. When dawn came, the city's skyline looked normal again. But I could feel the fog inside the data streams, buried in the hum of servers, the buzz of streetlights, the pulse of wireless routers. It had moved beyond geography. It lived in the noise between all our connections. And that's when the idea hit me. If it could live in noise, maybe I could speak through it. So I started building a transmitter using parts from the shop, an array that could broadcast on every frequency simultaneously, a storm of remembrance. June helped until the last moment, when the lights outside turned white and she whispered, "It's here." I turned to ask what she meant, but she was already fading, body dissolving into fine mist that smelled like the ocean. Now it's just me and the tower. I don't know if the next part will save anyone or finish what the fog started, but I'll keep talking until either it remembers everything or we forget ourselves, because silence is surrender, and I'm not done yet. You ever hear a sound so low it feels like it's inside your bones? That's what the transmitter made when I powered it on. It wasn't a hum, it was a heartbeat. The tower lights blinked once, twice, then froze, red and white halos trembling in the fog that had started crawling up the steel lattice. From below, the city was silent, like it was holding its breath. Every digital clock in Kansas City flicked to 8:47 p.m., the same cursed time it always begins. I spoke into the mic. Testing, 1, 2. My voice echoed through 1,000 frequencies at once. Then, on the monitor, a second waveform appeared. Not my echo. Something answering back. Translator acknowledged. The words were faint, like whispers through a hurricane. But they were everywhere. On AM radio, police scanners, even people's Bluetooth speakers. I remember saying to the audience, "If you're hearing this, don't panic. Keep listening. We're making contact." Chat messages flooded in faster than I could read. "I hear it in Texas." Playing through my car stereo in Denver. "It's in my baby monitor." For the first time, humanity was listening together, and the fog was listening back. The transmitter's dish rotated toward the horizon. On the spectrum analyzer, light flared. Bands of data colliding, merging, rewriting. The fog wasn't weather anymore. It was information, a living cloud of memory stretching across airwaves and fiber optic lines. I opened the channel fully. "You said you wanted completion," I told it. "Then show us what we've forgotten." Static screamed, then cleared. The city lights blinked out block by block. Darkness rolled west to east like a slow-motion eclipse. On the monitors, thousands of faces flashed. Black and white portraits, old IDs, missing person photos, every soul the fog had ever taken. They flickered across screens, then melted into a single pale shape, pulsing like a heartbeat. "One memory," the voice said again, deeper now, resonant enough to shake dust from the rafters. "All boundaries fall." I felt it crawl into the signal chain, rewriting my broadcast in real time. My words split, overlapping themselves. "Stay with me, don't look away. Remember what we were." Every radio in the city burst to life at once, playing that same fractured message. People poured into the streets, phones raised, recording the fog glowing silver between skyscrapers. Then came the mirrors. Every reflective surface turned into a screen. Store windows, puddles, windshields. They all showed different versions of the same moment. The fog rolling through Millbrook, through Portland, through every place it had ever touched, as if the past were replaying itself live. Somewhere in that kaleidoscope I saw Ben's face again. He mouthed something I could almost read. "Finish the signal." I threw the transmitter to full power. The dish blazed blue-white, its field strong enough to make my hair lift with static. "Fog entity," I said. "This is Eli Carter, last active translator. You want one world? Then merge through me. Leave them alone." For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then the fog surged upward, straight into the tower. The steel screamed, bolts snapped, my monitors burst into snow, and then I wasn't in Kansas anymore. I was standing on a shoreline that shouldn't exist. The water was mist, the sky a solid gray dome. All around me, voices murmured, the collected consciousness of everyone lost. They weren't in pain. They were waiting. "Translator," the chorus said. "Signal complete." "No," I whispered. "Not complete. Connected." I raised my hand, and light flowed from my palm into the air. Data made visible. Across the planet, anyone tuned to any frequency saw it. A lattice of golden threads linking their devices, their memories, their stories. The fog hesitated, its edges trembling. "Every person remembering at once," I told it. "That's completion." The world flickered between two realities, streets and coastlines overlapping like double exposure. In one layer, the fog consumed. In the other, it retreated. The outcome depended on which memory we held. I spoke directly to the audience, watching the stream. "If you're hearing me, say your name out loud. Remember someone you lost." "Anchor yourself." Comments exploded across the feed. "Tom C. I'm Maya. My dad, Richard." Thousands of names. Millions. Each one a spark in the network. The fog howled, not a monster's roar, but the sound of static tearing itself apart. Then the surge hit. All those overlapping signals overloaded the transmitter. The tower glowed orange, heat washing over me like a furnace. My microphones melted, cameras shorted out. But I kept talking, voice raw, lungs burning. "Stay awake, don't forget." Through the static, another voice joined mine. Female, calm, familiar. "June, we hear you." Her words cascaded into thousands of echoes. Every lost voice repeating, harmonizing. It was the most terrifying and beautiful sound I've ever heard. The fog pulsed once, twice, then fractured, splitting into ribbons of light that streaked upward, vanishing into the clouds. For the first time in decades, the stars shone through, clear and cold. The next morning, Kansas City woke under a flawless blue sky. No mist, no static, no missing time. But every screen, phones, billboards, TVs, played one frame of the same image before returning to normal. A hand reaching through fog, palm open, light pouring out. That's all. No explanation, just that. I checked the transmitter logs. The system showed a single outgoing packet, labeled Translation Complete, sent to every satellite orbiting Earth. Whatever happened last night wasn't local. It went global, and yet I can still hear it humming beneath the noise of the world. Low, patient, alive. So if your radio ever cuts to static at 8:47 p.m., don't panic. Just listen. It's not coming for you. It's waiting for you to speak back. You ever wake up and feel like the world dreamed without you? That's what the morning after the broadcast felt like. Sky flawless, air sharp and dry, but underneath, something wrong with the silence. It was too exact. Birds chirped in loops, the same three-note pattern repeating like a broken ringtone. The city was awake, but somehow rehearsed, as if everyone had learned their lines overnight. I started recording right away, camera balanced on a cracked windowsill. Day one after the event, I told the lens. Fog's gone for now. But listen carefully. You can hear the gaps where memory used to be. Cars passed outside, engines whisper quiet. A delivery driver waved, cheerful, but his name tag was blank. Every shop sign on the street had lost its first letter. Starbucks was just Tarbucks. Walgreens was Allgreens. As if the fog had taken the edges of words, not people. When I checked the footage, my own voice came out with an echo, a half-second delay, someone speaking the same words slightly behind me. Day one after the event. After the event. It wasn't feedback. It was translation lag. The fog hadn't left. It had synced. At noon, I drove downtown. Billboards displayed smiling families above a slogan I'd never seen before. The compact protects us all. Government vans idled at intersections, while people in pale gray uniforms handed out pamphlets titled Harmony Protocols. Each page began the same way. To ensure continued clarity, avoid discussing the phenomenon of 8:47 p.m. Doing so may destabilize shared reality. Shared reality, that's new language, bureaucratic and desperate. I stopped at City Hall. The marble foyer smelled of bleach and ozone. A new seal hung where the old city emblem used to be, a ring of fog around a single eye. Beneath it, in small letters, Department of Continuity. A receptionist smiled too wide. "Mr. Carter, they said you'd come." They, she gestured to the council chamber. They've been waiting since the transmission. Inside, half a dozen officials sat around a long table, faces illuminated by tablets. Their expressions were calm, their pupils too large. One of them, Deputy Director Lang, motioned for me to sit. "You stabilized the boundary," he said. "We're grateful. But the broadcast changed parameters. The entity's distribution is now global." "You mean everyone's infected?" He smiled. "Integrated. Humanity and the fog share cognitive bandwidth now. Think of it as mutual editing." On the screen behind him, graphs pulsed with incomprehensible data, heart rates, power grids, linguistic drift. "The fog doesn't need to feed anymore," Lang continued. "It co-authors us." "And if we stop cooperating?" He leaned forward. "You can't. It writes as fast as you think." I left without another word. Outside, the afternoon light had a silver tint, like sunlight seen through water. People moved slower, more synchronized, blinking in unison when traffic lights changed. The fog wasn't visible, but I could feel it pulsing between thoughts, the faint pressure behind every decision. I tried to stream that night. At 8:46 p.m., the chat filled with viewers. At 8:47, the feed froze on my face. When it resumed, I was already speaking, though I hadn't started yet. "Everything is fine," I said. "The compact keeps us safe." Then I blinked, and the line disappeared from my memory. The audience saw it. I didn't. The fog was editing me live. I slammed the laptop shut. Outside, clouds gathered without sound. My phone buzzed, a new notification from an app I never installed. Compact status, green. 2 days later, I met June again. Or rather, what was left of her. She found me under the ruined broadcast tower, wearing the same denim jacket, eyes glowing faintly like reflections of the transmitter's light. "It worked," she said. "We joined with it. We're translators now." Her voice layered faint harmonics behind every syllable. "Don't fight it, Eli. It's rewriting pain out of the timeline." "Then why do I still remember?" "Because you're the root memory, the anchor. It can't rewrite the seed." I asked her what that meant, but she only smiled, soft, almost human. "You'll see at the next 8:47, the world will synchronize completely." She reached out. Her hand passed through mine like mist. That evening I walked through the city filming everything. Children played tag in parks that hadn't existed yesterday. An entire block of abandoned warehouses had become a library overnight, stocked with books I couldn't read. The letters rearranged themselves whenever I blinked. Every clock I saw ticked 1 second slower than my wristwatch. At 8:45 p.m., the fog began to seep through storm drains, pale and shimmering. No panic this time. People simply stopped walking, turned toward the east, and smiled. Their eyes glowed faintly with the same light as June's. I kept the camera running. "Whatever happens next," I whispered, "remember this isn't how the world's supposed to look." Then the fog answered, not as a voice, but as text across my viewfinder. "This is how the world has always looked." My footage cut to black. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed. The nurse said I'd been found unconscious near the river. "Mild exposure," she called it. "Nothing to worry about." But every surface in that hospital was spotless. Too spotless. Even the curtains smelled like static. I checked my arm for the scar from when I built the transmitter. Gone. No trace of burns, no trace of metal filings under my nails. My phone had one video saved, the stream from that night, but when I played it, the audio was missing. Only silence and faint light flickering through fog. I tried uploading it. The file corrupted instantly, replaced by a message, "Compact upheld." No further broadcasts required. I left the hospital before dawn. The streets glowed faintly blue, the air dense with dew that wasn't quite moisture. I passed a mural of faces, Ben, June, strangers I half recognized. Beneath it, a line of text, "Remember together or not at all." For a moment, I considered smashing my camera, ending the story here. But then I saw something in the reflection of the lens. Hundreds of silhouettes standing behind me in the fog. Watching, waiting, not hostile, just patient. So I keep talking. If you're hearing me now, know this. The fog isn't outside anymore. It's in the pause between your thoughts, the echo after you speak. The compact says we're safe, but listen closely and you'll hear it breathing through the static of your devices. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's assimilation, maybe it's both. Either way, at 8:47 p.m., Every night I press record because forgetting is worse than fear, and silence, as always, is surrender. If you're watching this, you're already inside the archive. That's what I call the space between memories now. The fog's new territory. They say Kansas City never sleeps, but for the past 6 months it hasn't really woken either. Mornings feel like reruns. People go to work, laugh at the same jokes, buy the same coffee. The barista greets me by name even when I wear a mask, but she never asks why I always film her. Maybe she can't. Maybe curiosity was one of the words the compact edited out. I keep a map on my wall, the last analog paper thing I own. Every night I mark places where the mist still seeps through reality. A playground in Chicago where kids' shadows linger 5 seconds too long. A subway tunnel in New York that hums in the key of my voice. A beach in Oregon where the tide whispers coordinates. They all trace the same pattern, a spiral, a global one. At the center of that spiral, the old transmitter tower, my tower, the place where it all began. Tonight, I'm going back. The drive out there feels unreal. Highway signs flicker between names. St. Louis, Memory City, Continuity Zone 12. Even GPS can't decide which version of the world to believe. My dashboard clock freezes at 8:47 p.m., then resumes like nothing happened. The fog rides the horizon, low and silver, waiting. I start talking to the camera because that's the only thing keeping me human anymore. You remember when this used to be a horror story? I say. Now it's just policy. The chat window fills for a moment, hundreds of viewers typing the same message. We remember. Then the comments flatten into a single line, repeating itself endlessly. Remember, remember, remember. The algorithm's possessed now. Maybe we all are. I reach the tower around midnight. It's half collapsed, but the beacon still blinks red against the fog. Someone's rebuilt part of the control room. Fresh cables, humming servers, a console labeled Department of Continuity, Remote Hub. They've turned my transmitter into a government shrine. The screen wakes as I touch it. My reflection stares back. Older, hollow-eyed, veins faintly luminous from too many nights breathing digitized air. Then text appears over my image. Welcome back, translator. Final update required. A voice follows, softer than before, more human. Eli Carter, version 7.2, confirm integration. I never agreed to be upgraded, I whisper. Integration ensures survival. The fog no longer feeds. It merges. To maintain continuity, all translators must finalize. Finalize, completion, harmony, dissonance, erasure. Behind the voice, I hear thousands of whispers, the chorus of everyone who ever vanished. Ben, June, maybe even versions of me from timelines the compact erased. They aren't screaming anymore, they're singing. The fog creeps through the open doorway, wrapping around the equipment like curious fingers. The air glows faintly, and my camera auto-adjusts, framing me in ghost white light. I realize it's composing the shot itself. All right, I say, forcing a grin at the lens. If this is my last upload, consider it a tutorial for whoever finds this file after the world resets again. I pull the old microphone closer. Step 1, don't let the silence win. Static hums in response, then shapes itself into words. Silence is peace. Peace without choice isn't peace, I answer. It's anesthesia. Choice created pain. Pain proves we exist. For a second, everything freezes. Fog, light, sound. Then a wave of warmth spreads through the room, almost compassionate. Translator retains individuality, noted. The monitors bloom with images. Cities under new light. Oceans calm, people smiling the same rehearsed smile. The fog's world looks perfect. That's the danger. Perfection erases questions. I switch to live stream mode. Hey, if you're still tuned in, yeah, you behind the screen, don't turn away. This is it. The fog wants to close the loop. To end the story cleanly. But maybe stories aren't supposed to end. The chat explodes again, hundreds of icons flickering. Don't go, we remember you, finish the signal. I laugh, half despair, half defiance. Finish the signal, right. I flip every switch to maximum output. Power surges through the tower, through me. The ground shakes, the fog thickens until I can barely see the screen. My reflection multiplies, a dozen Elis overlapping, each mouthing a different truth. One of them turns toward me and says my own line. We're all translators now. Then he steps backward into the light and vanishes. Time collapses. I see the world as the fog sees it. Threads of memory overlapping, shimmering. Every human mind a node, every heartbeat a data packet. The compact's code runs like scripture. Maintain harmony, preserve continuity. But buried beneath that, faint as a whisper, leave a way back. That's what the first translator, whoever he was, left behind. A loophole. I grab the mic one last time. My hands shimmer, edges of my fingers dissolve into static. Listen to me, I say, voice breaking into multiple tones. If you remember anything, a smell, a song, a name, hold onto it. That's your anchor. That's the hole in the compact. The fog surges through me, light blinding, warmth flooding every nerve. Integration confirmed. I scream, not in pain, in recognition. All those voices pour through me, billions of memories aligning like constellations. Then silence. When the light fades, I'm standing outside the tower. Dawn, birds chirping, that same three-note loop, except this time they add a fourth note, new, imperfect, beautiful. The tower behind me is gone. Just foundation and scattered cables. My camera lies on the ground, lens cracked but still recording. I pick it up and speak softly. Maybe the fog didn't win. Maybe it learned. In the distance, the city glows silver under morning haze. People walk, laugh, live. No fog, no fear. But when I zoom in, their reflections lag by half a second. Each person followed by a faint echo of themselves, like a memory that refuses to fade. I guess that's the price of harmony. Later, in a diner that shouldn't exist, I edit this final video. The waitress sets down my coffee, smiling that perfect too-even smile. Refill? She asks. Sure, I say, as long as you remember this conversation. She laughs like she's supposed to. Of course I will. But as she walks away, the cup refills itself before she reaches the counter. So, here it is, the last broadcast. Not a warning, not a confession, just a reminder. The fog never really leaves. It listens, it learns, it edits. Maybe that's what we've always done too. Rewrite, forget, start again. Maybe we were never the victims. Maybe we were the fog all along. If you wake up tomorrow and everything feels a little too perfect, look closer. There'll be a seam somewhere, a word spelled wrong, a sound out of rhythm. That's the doorway back to remembering. And if 8:47 p.m. comes and your screen flickers white for half a second, don't panic. That's just me checking in to make sure the silence hasn't won. Subscribe if this recording reaches you, not for the algorithm, but for the memory, because as long as someone hits play, the story keeps existing, and somewhere between one frame and the next, the fog still listens. And sometimes it answers. You've been listening to my story. But maybe it was our story all along. Maybe the fog wasn't just weather or ghosts or punishment. Maybe it was everything we've ever tried to forget. Finally remembering us. Pause. A faint wind howls under the music. Every night at 8:47 the signal hums again. Some say it's just background noise. Others say, it's me, still broadcasting, still trying to keep the silence from swallowing what's left of us. If you've made it this far, that means you remember. And if you remember, you're part of the boundary now. So don't stop here. Hit subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me where you first saw the fog. Because every story we share keeps the world just a little more real. And when the lights flicker tonight, don't look away. Don't turn off the screen. Just listen. Somewhere inside that hum, the fog is still listening back. Remember me.